Hello, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. I do. So, one thing I forgot to mention in the previous episode, which was titled We All Wear the Devil, which is a title I really like. I think it sounds good. I like that title. I forgot to mention the idea that the devil is a prominent part in that sentence, obviously. And it's important in that sentence. And I forgot to link this idea to a quote you might have heard before. Probably you heard it from, I think it's The Usual Suspects. The quote is, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to make us believe he didn't exist." I like this line. You know, it's a profound line. And I'm pretty sure it comes from Charles Baudelaire, the French poet. And that's something I forgot to mention, is this idea that we convince ourselves that the devil doesn't exist. There is something healthy about the essence of religion, of creating these characters, God, the devil. There is something healthy there in representing something that cannot be represented. You know, God is omnipotent, omniscient. It takes no form. But the simple fact of calling it something is how we, as humans, make sense of the world we live in. Same thing with the devil. And when you refuse to accept that there is a problem, that there is a devil in your life, diminishing you, deteriorating your experience, when you refuse to accept that, that's a problem. So, in the idea, we all wear the devil. I forgot to mention that acknowledging the devil was an important part. Accepting that it exists. And it's funny because I'm not a religious person, and I am a truly ambivalent person. That's a word I like. I'm quite sporadic. I keep bouncing left and right. Sometimes I'm more on the poetic side of life. The sun sets, the sun rises. Life is this poetic thing. And sometimes I'm more nihilistic, I suppose. The sun doesn't set, we're on a rock spinning around the sun, and the sun, everything is spinning. The sun doesn't set, it doesn't rise. That's not how it happens. So I keep bouncing between the two. And so the devil doesn't exist. There's issues in your head, unchallenged issues, trauma that you haven't dealt with. That's what you call the devil, and calling it a devil is easier. But I do think there's something healthy about looking at things through this prism, this poetic prism, really. The idea that the sun sets. I remember my grandpa telling me this idea when I was a kid. Well, not a kid, but he's a remarkably intelligent man, super educated, and he's a religious man. He's a Christian, and he's devoted to his faith as well. And so I asked him, how does the Bible make sense? How can you accept this text, right, when it's obviously false? You're smart, how can you be religious? And the point he made was that the two are not mutually exclusive. That the point of the Bible is not to take it at face value. Just like the fact that the sun doesn't set and doesn't rise. It's just more beautiful to say it this way. As humans, we have this capacity we have this powerful perception, and we can shape our reality, really, through our minds. And so saying that the sun sets and the sun rises is beautiful. Simple as, even though it doesn't. So he can believe in this text, believe in the power that this religion has, how it helps him, how it adds to his life, without believing that the text is true. It's about the subtext, it's about the essence of the message. So, I have some notes. Not much, to be honest. Not much at all. I fucked up the sound in the previous episode, being careless. I haven't watched my episodes in a while, but I saw a snippet at some point of a previous episode, and the sound was a bit fucked up, and I didn't think to address it. So thank you to the person who commented on the previous episode. I'll fix it this time. I'm not sure why. I don't know how. I'm not a sound guy. I just put the automatic sound level on the mic, assuming that it's going to be perfect, and then I don't check. So I'll make sure to check and to fix what I can fix if there's an issue. Hopefully there won't be any. But I've been quite careless, which is a bad thing, really, considering how easy it is to record these podcasts. In last week, I keep saying last week, I look at my notes, and since my memory is so bad, I wonder, where did this note come from? But based on the format of this thing here, it comes from last week, doesn't it? Last week, we had a speech from our chef at work. And he mentioned Confucius, as he has a few times in the past, in a light manner, poking fun at himself, saying, I don't really know about Confucius, but let me talk about him. And he mentioned this idea of taking care of the unit. Now, I typed that on Google. It didn't come up with anything, so I don't know what he's talking about. But I suppose he might have read Confucius. And the point he was making, as far as I can understand it, is that I think it's a point that I first heard attributed to the Dalai Lama when I was a kid. The idea that it's not the big things that matter, it's the tiniest things. We naturally are taught to place a lot of importance on certain things and less on other things. It seems like a natural thing. The state of your room, the state of your toilets, the state of your toothbrush, the state of your socks, your shoes, these are not as important as how the world perceives you, as how you look when you go outside. Some things, it seems, we naturally place less importance on. And I remember hearing this idea that we should place more importance on the tiniest things, the things that seem to not matter at all, the things that we forget. Those are the things that matter the most, the tiniest things. I remember this idea. I think I like this idea. This idea has been on my mind for a long time. I haven't applied it really, but I should. And he reminded me of that when his point was you should take care of the units. His point was, if we take care of each other as a unit in the restaurant, and then if we take care of the smaller parts of the restaurant to a micro level, this will impact at a micro level. This will impact the restaurant as a whole and its reputation across the world. I believe that was his point. And I don't have anything else to say about that. Let's see if my notes can save me. Bum, bum, bum. Well, I suppose the point was on my mic, me being inattentive, because it seemed like an almost irrelevant detail, the sound, when I know that sound is more important than anything. I'm working on the thumbnails now, putting more effort into them. I like, to a degree, how they're coming out. I thought about redoing all the previous thumbnails, but then I thought, nah, that doesn't make sense. But I like the idea that I'm bringing some graphic design into this whole process because I enjoy graphic design. And it's exciting. It's exciting but annoying because the format I had works for a really short title, and I tend to have long titles at times, like the previous one, which doesn't entirely work, in my opinion. But I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos recently. Not recently, really, since I started having access to YouTube. And it's extremely inspiring. I watched, I think, a guy called Dupli, maybe, who talks about hip-hop. And his videos are very well orchestrated and edited, super engaging. I like his take to a degree on hip-hop. He seems to be a bit knowledgeable. And as I watch these different channels that make videos, I see one video, I stumble on it randomly, and then it's a video on hip-hop. I think, I like hip-hop. Maybe I can learn from this guy, maybe. So I go on his channel. And what I want is the same flavor, right? I watched that video. Can I get more of that flavor? Just like when I saw a Casey Neistat video for the first time, and I felt so grateful that he had made hundreds of videos that I could just binge watch all of them, and that they all had pretty much the same flavor. And I am quite envious of these guys. I tried to replicate Casey Neistat, didn't work, wasn't for me. And as I said, I'm envious of the idea of having your channel with its own flavor, where you make your thing. And this works, as far as I'm concerned, for shorter videos, just like this Dupli guy who makes videos on hip-hop. He has a subject each time, and he makes a video, and he says what he has to say. Now, I'm lazy, so whatever I have to say, I'll just say it here. No editing, not as engaging as it could be if I put some time into it. And I'm considering more and more the idea of picking a subject, crafting a script, structuring my ideas, and making a video. The hurdle, which is possibly just an excuse, is that I'm not that interested in putting together and editing a video, although I feel like it could be beneficial in terms of learning just the fact of whatever I have to say instead of just saying it, doing research, correcting my thoughts, seeing where I'm wrong. One of my excuses has been I have questions. As an artist, I like the idea of having questions and exploring them and asking them. But even when I write a script, I'm doing research to see, really to go as deep as possible into that one idea. Whereas where I make these podcasts, which are once a week, I don't do much research. I don't put enough time into them. So it's mostly about saying what I have to say, knowing that a lot more could be said, that it could be said better, and that some things shouldn't be said because they're wrong, because I don't really know what I'm talking about enough. So I suppose doing more research is reasonable. And then, the excuse I always come back to is that this is a speaking exercise. But this is getting old. I should plan these more. I've been saying that for a year, I know. But I should plan these more. And on the other hand, as I said, I envy the idea of having a hip-hop channel where I talk about hip-hop. But I can't just talk about one subject, even if I had to say a lot about it. I like the idea in this format here, I can talk about whatever. And that's why no one watches these consistently or at all. It's because I talk about anything and everything. And it's not like my charming personality and charisma is enough. There's something truly enticing about finding a channel with its own flavor, where you can learn stuff, or even hear stuff you've heard before, said by someone else. That's something I do a lot of. I find a channel on movies, then I type the name of the channel plus the name of the movie that I like, because I would like to see that person's opinion on that movie. And there's this From the Basement live performance by Radiohead of what's the name of In Rainbows. I think it's my favorite album of theirs. And this live performance I love because when I discovered Radiohead, as you do when you find a new artist that you like, you listen to everything and then you listen to it again and again and again on repeat. And it gets a bit, it gets excessively repetitive. That it gets repetitive at some point. And then I stumbled on this video where they are going through the same album, but they're tweaking things. They're doing things differently. There's a very specific moment, for example, in a song, where instead of going this way, Tom York singing, he goes this way. Might be hard to understand, but he does it differently. And the first time I heard it, I thought, that's not the way it's supposed to sound, right? That's not the original song. It's different. And the exact reason why I went back to that specific video and listened to it again and again and again is because it's different. The first time it was uncomfortable because it was different, but that's what got me coming back. And I cherish the differences in that performance from the original album. And you'll go and listen to that album being sung on stage in different places just so you can hear a different version of it. It gave me the idea of doing that for an album one day. I'm not a musician, but imagine if Radiohead had decided to record each of the 10 or so songs, record them multiple times, and then released, let's say 3 different albums. In each album, a different version of the song. To me, that sounds like a good idea, because then you have multiple versions of the album. And so if you like a song, you can hear it in multiple different versions. And just like dim sum, there might be a dim sum you like more than the others, but getting all of those dim sum together makes you appreciate more this because you appreciate this less. And this, this kind of tapestry as a whole is what keeps you coming back. The fact that every time you go to get dim sum, it's going to be different. You're going to get a different selection. You might get just one different dish, but it's going to affect the whole experience. So I thought doing this for an album sounds like a good idea. In theory, release 5 albums, 5 different takes of each song with tiny differences. Just like that, as stupid as it sounds, there's that one moment in Rainbows from the Basement performance where he goes there instead of there, Tom York. First time I hated it. It's the one thing that has kept me coming back to that performance, listening to it over and over again. I listen to the whole thing just so I can get to that moment and hear a different version. What's the point of this? Once again, I don't know. Well, I suppose the point was, what I really wanted to talk about was this idea of stumbling on a channel with its specific flavor, its specific character in the middle that has a specific opinion on certain things. Today, I stumbled on Dupli, watched the first video. I liked his vibe and the video. I watched more videos. As a whole, I didn't love it. I didn't find it that informative or that interesting, except for his style. There's another guy called YMS. He has a video on Synecdoche in New York that I found incredibly educational. I loved it. It taught me a lot. Specifically the first part, but I watched the whole thing. I watched it because his opinion was interesting, and then I went through his whole catalog to see his opinion on specific movies. Turns out I disagree on a lot of things, and I am not that interested in the channel as a whole because I don't find his insights to be that interesting and his opinions don't align with mine. And I don't find them that educational. But that specific video interested me. So I suppose one solution could be creating multiple channels, or I just keep doing what I'm doing and start making more thought out videos on specific topics on this channel. And things I could cover are, I suppose music, film. That's one thing. I have seen a lot of movie reviews, and I'm sure I could do that. Not as well as the best, and definitely not well at all at first, but that's something I could give it a go. For some reason, I don't really like the idea of critiquing film. But I think that's just a symptom of laziness, just another symptom of laziness. There's something very freeing about this format here where I'm not tied to anything and I can talk about anything. But those are just excuses. Another video I saw recently was on the topic of viewing media consumption the same as food. Which, when I heard it, it hit me in my gut. Which is to say, I felt the idea. What if what I was watching right now was food? You can immediately tell what kind of food it would be. You're watching TikTok, you're consuming junk food right now. You're drinking soda and you're eating McDonald's. That's what you're doing. Are you going to do that for hours continually every day? How's that going to affect you? And besides that, are you going to eat junk food for 2 hours every day, for 3 hours every day? Are you going to eat junk food and some good food for 10 hours every day? No, you're not. So when I heard this, immediately the reaction was visceral. The reaction was, imagine this is food. Literally, right now I am putting stuff in my body. I thought that was a really interesting premise because it made me feel something. In fact, what would this podcast here be? what's the word when directors can be, there's a term, another term that I like. Not capricious. There's a term when a director is giving themselves too much leeway. That's what I'm doing here. You wouldn't go to the restaurant for this meal here. It's about an hour, sometimes half an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. The way it tastes is extremely inconsistent. I would say that at times it tastes a little bit good, but mostly you're not even sure what you're tasting. This is interesting. Should look at it like food. Looking at it like food. I like this idea. On that note, I am super hungry. And there's food everywhere in this room. Today I went climbing this morning and spoke with Stefan. Stefan is like he has become, probably unbeknownst to him, my Gandalf and my mentor in terms of it goes back to the subject of the sun setting and the sun rising. Your perception defines your reality to a large degree. So when you meet someone, you don't know them, but you know how they impact you. I don't know Stefan that well, and I haven't known him that long, but I understand that what he provides me is extremely beneficial. And as far as I can tell, he is very much embodying this Gandalf figure and mentor of providing me with useful information, with motivation, with pure energy. And so that's how I view him. And he told me a lot of things that I knew already. But it's crazy how when you're so used to living through the internet, to learning through the internet, being told things, you forget how much harder reality hits. Some things you've heard a million times. You've heard David Goggins tell you, stay hard, work hard, be a savage. You've heard this. It hits differently when it's a real person who's real, who does it and tells you should do it. And so one thing he's told me, for example, is you should write 500 words every day. And it hits different when you know you're talking to someone who does that, someone who's dedicated, to someone who understands that you get this one life, you have a responsibility, and even though it's something that I've told myself a million times and that I wholeheartedly believe in, you have a responsibility. If you're given gifts, if you're intelligent, creative, athletic, kind, etc., people ask themselves, what's the purpose of life? Look at yourself and you'll know. What do you have to offer? Looking at it through this logical lens helps. And I've known for a long time what I have to offer. I'm not gonna advance technology or be a politician or anything. I'm an artist. That's what I am. That's what I have to offer. And therefore I have a responsibility. It's like I was given this gift. I have to take care of it. I have to grow it. And I have to give it to the world in a way. And he made that clear. He made it clear that when you have been given something and when you owe something to the world, you should find ways, by hook or by crook, by any means necessary, you need to accomplish that. He made it clear, and that felt really good. And so now the idea that I have to write every day a certain amount feels more three-dimensional in my head. I've done it in the past, writing every day, reading every day for hours, and then I fell off. And what he's reminding me of is, you just have to do it. Just like this podcast, almost every time I make it, the time before I start, especially when I have so few notes, like today, I really don't want to make it. And, not that this specific episode or these past episodes are my gift to the world and me fulfilling my destiny and doing my responsibility. Maybe not those specifically, but the act of doing it, just like the act of writing 500 words, even if all of those words are just 500 words, the act of doing it is you fulfilling your destiny and your responsibility in a way. It's those moments where you're moving towards something and it seems like you're just lost in the forest. Those moments where you keep walking, even though it feels like you're going nowhere and you're not making any progress. Because maybe you're not. Maybe you're literally not making any progress. Maybe you're walking in circles in the forest. But that's still better than staying there and doing nothing. And once again, it relates to my point on climbing that I made a few weeks ago. Started this green 4, I think, where the holes, you have to stick your fingers, 3 at one point, 2 at one point. The start is super uncomfortable, especially when you're a bit more tall like myself and not flexible. The start is annoying, then you go there, then you have to go like this. And the end, you have these tiny footholds that I hate because they make me uncomfortable. I think I'm going to fall. I use rentals, which is not advised. It's not something you should do when you climb regularly. And the first time I got halfway up, my whole body was in pain. It hurt. I hated it. I thought, man, that's not for me. Tried again and again. Some guy was motivating me. A really good climber kept saying, oh, you almost got it. Well done. Keep going, keep going. And all I could think was, I've seen him do it. He made it look effortless. I look like a fool on this. I look like it's extremely hard when for him it's effortless. I kept going. I got really close and I fell. And at that point, all of my motivation was gone. I thought, that's as close as I'm going to get. That was that was me getting lucky. Something you learn when you keep doing this, when you keep climbing, is that you keep getting lucky if you keep trying. You just do. Eventually I finished it. Felt like the hardest climb of my life. I thought, wow, I've done it. I don't have to go back and try again. It's done. And the next day I went back to it. First thing, I did it. And I finished it the first time because I knew how to do it. And so the point is, as I was struggling, looking like an idiot, feeling like I was not going anywhere because you try it 10 times and you fall the same way 10 times and your body hurts, I was in fact completing the climb when it felt like I was on a plateau going nowhere. So that's one of the points. As long as you're moving, you're moving. As long as you're moving towards something, you're moving towards something. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you're making every mistake in the book, at least you're getting them out of the way. Second point was, I got it first time when I tried again. Because once you've done something, it becomes easier to repeat. So second point. Same thing with my script. I need to finish it. It's going to suck. It's difficult. Every step of the way is difficult. But once I finish it, I'll know how to finish one. And I've never finished a script. I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker in 2016. I've never finished a script. And I've told countless people, I'm working on this script. I'm working on that script. I kept changing my mind. Oh, I have a new idea, blah, blah, blah. And it's annoying to say this because I know how they must feel. I mean, this guy, he's not finishing anything. He keeps moving on. He's running away. He won't ever finish something. But I knew eventually I'll find a script that sticks and I'll complete it. And all of those failures will amount to something. So you finish it by any means and then you learn something. As ugly as it's going to look the first time, you'll learn something. And the third thing, which I learned once again from climbing, is you get those moments. There was, for example, this blue climb on the a comp climb, where I completed it the wrong way the first time. And someone told me, I felt stupid because there was another guy trying it and I finished it in front of him. And I didn't understand that it wasn't a case of me finding the easier way to start it. It was me not starting it the right way. I felt stupid. Went back to it, realized that there was a specific way to start it, that you had to start it this way. And it was highly uncomfortable. I tried it a few times. I couldn't do it. There were 4 of us trying, in a one by one, and I couldn't do it. And then one time I almost did it, right? And I thought, as I usually do, this was my one time. Because you get those when you're trying something over and over again. You get this moment where it seems like everything aligns. It seems like you make progress from here to here. Like you got lucky, like it's magical somehow, right? So I thought this was my lucky point and I didn't finish it. So it's not going to work. I'm done. And I learned after a few months of climbing, that's not how it works. You just keep going and this moment will, present itself again. And when it does, you understand better how that one point previously where you almost did it, how what you were doing was more correct than what you did the other 100 times. Once you have two pieces of evidence, you can kind of connect the dots, so to speak. I realized it was a question of I had to hold the boulder, lift up, and bring my right shoulder as close to the wall as possible. That's how I kept balance. I tried 100 times, never thinking about that. That's why I was failing. All I had to do was to keep trying, almost succeed once, then keep trying again 100 times, then almost succeed, to realize how I could succeed through failure. As the failures stacked up, my understanding of the problem evolved. And so eventually I did it. And then now, just like that green, every day I go back to the gym. That's one of the climbs that I do first time, just to remind myself that that's how it works. That's how it works. You keep failing and failing and failing again, and it feels like you're not going anywhere. Eventually, you get a little bit of success, which is useless on its own, because it's this piece of information in a sea of ignorance, right? And that piece of success makes you feel worse, right? Because you almost got it, but you didn't. And now all you have is this little star surrounded by darkness. So it makes it worse. It seems like you're even further from the goal. That's the point when you need to keep going. You need to keep going to get this other star. I don't know why I'm saying stars. It doesn't work anymore. This other dot, this other piece of information. Then you connect the two and you see, oh, I did this that time and I did the same thing that time. This tiny thing, which was bringing my right shoulder over. Once again, the first time I almost did it, I had no clue that that's why I was successful. But the second time, I felt it. Because I had those two different pieces of information that aligned. And then the third time, I'm able to do it. On that point, I know when this thing here, this format works. I know when in the past I have felt like it was working. I can't point to a full episode where it was working. But I know there were moments where it was working. And so it's just a question of eliminating all of the errors, all of the failures, keeping the good stuff. And one way to do this organically would be to pick a subject, do research, and then make my thing. Which would require me to be less lazy, for sure. But that's a good option. I think I'm done with my notes. Also, I'm in complete darkness now, so that's usually where I end. This thing here. But thank you for listening. Hope you did. I would talk about echoes, but I am in complete darkness. The sun decides when this is over, when the sun sets. And the sun did. When the earth rotates, and it did. So thank you, enjoy the present, and remember, just keep going, just do it. I wonder if you can see anything, but I have a stupid expression on my face.